My favourite Yarra Valley winery and wines.
What is it?
Mount Mary.
The wines are perfect.
Should we just raise a little glass to your grandparents first? We have the 2015 Triolet. Cheers. Bit difficult to get to, but thank you.
Well,
thanks for coming in, Sam. Cheers.
Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Got Some, a wine podcast hosted by myself, Angus O'Loughlin, a wine fanatic, but a loser and an uneducated swine when it comes to the industry that is wine. I just know what I like. I'm on the journey to find out why I like it. That's why I've got Master Sommelier Carlos Santos sitting next to me.
Morning. How are you? Very good, very good. Excited to be here. Very special day today. We have a special guest. So, yeah.
In 2022, I emailed in April saying, can we please have Sam on the podcast? And I am on record as saying my favourite Yarra Valley winery and wines, Mount Mary. And it's taken us 2 years and me bombarding him at a restaurant, a Greek restaurant down in Lorne, to make this happen. But it just seems like he didn't get the email or correspondence. But Sam Middleton, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Angus. No, it's great to be here. And apologise for that.
There's no apologies. You didn't know. Like I said, I emailed you like a couple of years ago. You're like, I genuinely have never seen that email.
We've only just got emails out in Coldstream, so maybe that's something to do with it.
Right. Yeah, it's the pigeons. That's the best way to get you. Well, thank you for opening up the front gates, at least in conversation about the process of Mount Mary and your story in particular. We are very lucky enough to be doing this in two parts again. So the first episode, which people are listening to right now, we really want to focus on who you are and your story with being a third-generation winemaker down at Mount Mary. And then the second episode, we're going to be talking about the wines and in particular the quintet. And you've actually bought a flight of 4 wines, which is super. Today we also have a Chardonnay and the Triolet to try. So thank you so much for this. And I guess my first question, and a great question, is your family is wine. I mean, you're synonymous. Was there ever a moment where Sam wasn't going to be a winemaker as the third generation following your grandfather and father's footsteps?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. It's one that I get asked quite often. And I think looking back in retrospect, there was probably never any doubt that I would end up doing what I'm doing now. It's not to say that I was in my teens thinking that I would absolutely be a winemaker, but wine was always a big part of my life. You know, there was always wine on the table. Some of my earliest memories are memories of being in the winery during vintage and just that buzz and that excitement that sort of surrounded vintage time, chaos. But it was just, it's, I guess, something that stuck with me, that vibe and that energy that you feel around vintage time is something that that's really stuck to me. But I guess for me, it was probably the agricultural and farming side of the industry that really drew me in initially. And then from there, my love of wine and my appreciation of wine and I guess wanting to learn more sort of rolled from there.
So grandpa and grandma, we should say as well, sorry, not to...
Absolutely.
Yeah, yep. Grandma and grandpa in 1971 planted the first vines on the spot. Yep. And we will, I would love to know the history of that moment because your dad, who was the second generation, now is the CEO of the company.
Absolutely. He
would have been a young tacker. Does he have memories of planting the vines?
Yeah, he does. Yeah, he helped my grandfather basically plant the vineyard from the initial plantings in 72. So, my grandfather was a doctor in the local area, a GP. He had a lot of history. Well, he knew a lot about that first wave of winemaking in the valley, and he tasted the wines, and I guess he got sort of sucked in by the history of that initial period of grape growing. And then in his 50s and 60s, he became obsessed with wine and travelled a lot through Europe and really wanted to emulate those European styles of wine that, really weren't being done in the country at the time.
And that actually leads me to the question, because obviously it's Burgundy and Bordeaux mostly, but why not Italian, especially because I think it would have probably done quite okay as well, some Italian varietals? Yeah,
I mean, that's a good question as well. I think it probably comes back from the varieties that were being planted back in the 1850s. And they were certainly a lot of Cabernet and then Bordeaux varieties and Pinot as well. I think Pinot was the first variety planted in 1838. I guess the people that initially got him into wine were people that loved French wines. And he had a lot of connections in France, in Burgundy and Bordeaux. And as I said, they loved to travel there. And that was probably initially the reasons why, they chose the varieties to plant.
And that's a big part of the Mount Mary story is those Bordeaux styles. You really do kind of lean on the fact that we are making wine in that style. Why was that such a huge part of your grandparents' vision that, not only to go over there and be inspired to make wine and kind of seeing climate areas with that, I think it's a north-facing hill that you've got, is that correct?
Yeah. So climatically, my grandpa identified the Yarra as being somewhere in between Burgundy and Bordeaux back in the 70s. So a little bit warmer than Burgundy, but not probably quite as warm as Bordeaux. Now things have changed quite a lot. In fact, in some years, we're probably more akin with the Southern Rhone Valley than we are with either Burgundy and Bordeaux.
Oh.
So I guess that was a driver in what varieties he planted initially as well. But he loved to drink those wines. And I think any winemaker will tell you if you're going to be successful in this game, you've got to make wines that you
enjoy
truly
drinking.
love and enjoy to drink yourself. And he loved those subtle, restrained, elegant styles that were being made on the left bank of Bordeaux in particular back in the 70s and the 80s. And he was super determined and driven to try and emulate that style.
Well, should we just raise a little glass to your grandparents first? As we have the 2015 Triolet. Cheers. Bit difficult to get to, but thank you.
Well,
thanks for coming in, Sam.
can make a
Cheers.
double.
Thank you.
Yeah, very very interesting range of varietals, and is in total what 18 or something.
We've pulled a couple out recently.
Yeah.
So we've currently got about 15 varieties planted in the vineyard, but I guess the core estate wines are made from 10 varieties. So we always start the tasting with the Triolet. This is quite I think a unique, quirky wine by Australian standards. My grandpa, once again, he loved the white wines of Bordeaux.
Grave and stuff.
Grave, absolutely. And yeah, he wanted to try and emulate that style and that's that sort of wine. So we planted Sauvignon Blanc, Semillon and Muscadel. The first blend of this particular wine was back in 88. So yeah, I think we handle these varieties and we make this wine in quite a interesting, I guess, unique way by Australian standards.
The oaky style, right? A more richer, riper
Exactly,
style
yeah.
rather than that fresh, clean, pungent Sauvignon Blanc, right? This is elegant and it's fine and it's balanced and it's a food wine.
Exactly. We try to do everything that we can to eliminate those really stereotypical Sauvignon Blanc characters. We want this wine to have a bit of subtle, savoury complexity. It's a wine that matches very well with food, and it also has a long history with aging. So we drink this wine 25, 30 years old, and it still drinks really well. And it ages very, very consistently. So part of trying to avoid those, I guess, more typical Sauvignon Blanc characters are through picking decisions, but also through how we handle these varieties in the winery.
And how would that, like, picking decision means just like a little bit later maybe, or rather than earlier while the grapes maybe still green and so fresh and pungent, so maybe a little later?
Absolutely, yeah. In particular with the Sauvignon Blanc. And as is the case with the Quintetto other blend, we try to make each of these varieties in a way that fits in with the blend. And, we try to encourage certain aspects of each variety to work in with the blend. And when we talk about Sauvignon Blanc, we want that to bring the concentration and the richness to the wine. So we do try to pick it a bit riper, and that naturally alleviates a bit of that herbaceous characters. And then the Semillon's there for that acid and the drive and to give the palate length and freshness. So we tend to try and pick that a little bit earlier.
And longevity, I guess, as well, in
Absolutely.
the long run, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think the Semillon and the Muscadel go a long way to giving this wine its longevity.
This is a fresh wine. We're 9 years in.
I mean,
Like
look,
this,
yeah, 15.
If I had not seen the 15, like on the label in front of me, I genuinely would have thought this was like a sort of new release, just because of my palate not being that well defined. I can sense the characteristics and complexity that age is given, but it is. You're right. Like, it's so crazy. This will go for another 20 years.
Yeah. No, you're right. I wanted to bring something from 15 because it was a fantastic Yarra vintage. I think probably one of the best vintages that I've sort of been involved with. And yeah, I think this is a good example of a trio that's going to go 25, 30 years quite happily.
He has like a flinty thing. It brings a little memory of like a flash of Didier Dagonot even to it. So very nice. Even though rather than 100% Sauvignon Blanc, obviously a Bordeaux blend, but that sense of Loire Valley character to it.
Definitely, yeah. And I think that was stylistically what my grandpa loved and what we like to drink and how we like to make it. I think another really important component is the phenolic. The texture of this wine is really important. And that's something that I would often hear my grandfather talking about was structure in white wines is super important. He always thought that helped the wine to age, being a natural antioxidant when we talk about phenolics, but also help the wine to match with food. So, both our white wines, that textural component is a really important part of the style.
And this goes a long way to learning more about Mount Mary and the reason for your grandparents planting these particular blends. But how do you feel when you do see some of the historic wineries being sold to bigger houses? And what happens when someone knocks on your door and offers you 8 figures?
Yeah, I mean, I understand why. It's certainly disappointing, and I would prefer to see more wineries stay in the hands of family members and I guess stay as smaller operations. But it's a reality. Generational family businesses, the families get bigger and they get harder and harder to keep as family businesses. As a family, we're staunch and very determined to continue the way that we've started. Yes, the family's getting bigger, but to this point, we all get on pretty well. So my sister has a very active involvement in the business as well.
Yeah.
She's sort of
business manager, right?
Manager, yeah. So we work quite closely together. We're respectful of our individual areas. Dad's still pretty heavily involved as well. So, yeah, to this point, we get on really well and we want to keep it going.
And then that family tree has grown and now there's, 20, 30 people who one day, will still have a say in Mount Mary. But, yeah, once that's going to be 60 and then it's 80 and then, I guess that lineage kind of gets wider.
It's hard. No, it is tricky and they're tricky questions. But I guess from my point of view, I feel so lucky and fortunate to have been given the opportunity that my grandparents gave to me. And my role is to play my part in our story and our history and our story going forwards. The third generation are so, I guess, focused and determined to continue to improve where we can. And yeah, I guess that's the focus.
2011 or 2012 was your first year as chief winemaker?
Yep, that's right. Yeah, 2012 was my first vintage.
And what is exciting is on the next episode, we will be tasting some of those early works with the quintet. But I guess, this episode focusing on you, I'm really interested in that travel over to France for you and doing some vintages in Bordeaux and Burgundy. What did you learn and what did you bring back as the third generation where you're like, well, they're doing this over in France, Dad, maybe we should be trying some things and starting to plant these, ideas and literally vines around that journey in France?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so that was I guess a really important time for me and a really enjoyable time as well. So I guess my winemaking history started at Coldstream Hills. So I did 2 vintages at Coldstream Hills in 06 and 07, and I loved my time there. I learned a huge amount, fantastic team, and really enjoyed that. And then I went and worked for Dominique Portet for 2 years. The Portets are great family friends of ours, and I've obviously done some fantastic things with Dominique prior to 2000, but when they started their family winery in 2000 in the Yarra, have done some amazing things with that property and that winery. And then in 2009, I went and worked a vintage in Burgundy. So went to Gevrey-Chambertin. So I was there for 3 months. And I think, yes, the practicalities of winemaking and what you learn over there are important, and viticulturally as well. The things that I learnt and saw were really important. But to me, it was the passion and the feel and how wine is such a part of their lifestyle that I took away from that experience, and tasting so many different wines with other winemakers over there. That was the thing that I guess I really got from the experience. And we're getting there in Australia, but I still probably think that we don't quite have that real passion and feel. For, you go to Gevrey and literally the whole village stops during vintage and everyone's in the winery helping on the sorting table, or, all these, professionals in different industries are taking holidays during vintage just so they can get involved. And
no way. So you got like doctors and the local vet everyone's at the table sorting.
Everyone's there just just wanting to have
how
some sort of
cool.
involvement.
So your first vintage, you came back from France. 2009, you're over there in Burgundy.
Yep.
And then 2010, do you go straight back to Mount Mary? And then my question is, why did you ever not go? Why did you go to Coldstream? Like, why did you go to these other wineries in the first place? Is it just to travel and live a little, or?
Well, yeah, I think, before you get sort of pulled back into a family winery and family business where once you're back, you're very unlikely to leave.
Yeah, that's true.
You want to try and get as many different experiences as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess something that I was quite not concerned about, but I wanted to come back to Mount Mary and feel like I'd earned the job that I had. And, I always see my job as the winemaker as a real privilege. It's not a right. And yeah, I was, I guess, quite aware that I wanted to get out there. I wanted to get the study that I needed behind me, get the work experience and working at different wineries behind me to really feel like I'd gone some way to really deserving the position and not just being in there because of my last name. And that was something that was pretty important to me.
So that imposter syndrome lived within you, and of course it could. Like, are people thinking I'm only here because Middleton's my last name? And yes, it makes sense that I would take over from my grandparents and father. So I guess, I haven't really thought about that. You want to be respected with your peers who you work with every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess within myself, I want to feel like I'm the best person for the job.
For the job, yeah.
And like we sort of touched on earlier, it's just for us and for this generation, we want to make sure that we're improving things. Yes, we often talk about as a family being respectful of the past, and my job is not to recreate the wheel or change things up drastically. We want to continue to make wines that look like Mount Mary wines, that reflect Mount Mary wines. We've got quite a big dedicated mailing list customer base that buy our wines because of consistency of style and also quality as well, which we need to be respectful of. But at the same time, we want to be as innovative and progressive as possible. And we want to keep getting better, and we believe that we can continue to get better. And that's what we're really focused on.
I was just going to ask about that. What do you think, since you started in 2012, has been the major change? If you look back at what that was doing and everything before, what has actually changed with you? What do you think? Where do you think you strengthened the brand of Mary?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I always look to the Vineyard for what we can change and what we can improve to then improve the quality in the winery. So for me, it was all about Vineyard and how we were running the vineyard and how we were growing fruit and how we wanted to farm, and how we wanted to farm going forwards as well was super important to me. So yeah, I think back in the day, it was a very conventional farming approach, and that's all that people really knew. And then over the last, in particular, I think 10, 15 years, people are becoming a lot more in tune with what they're doing. Chemical use, we hear the word sustainable, but just being softer on our soils, much less cultivation. And that's a real passion of mine. So, we want to, I guess we've put in lots of organic practices into the way that we grow fruit. We're not certified organic, and we're not exactly where we want to get to right now, but we're on the path to getting where we want to get to. We're not perfect, but we think that we've improved a lot in those areas. And yeah, I think that we can get a big bump in quality from a winemaking sense as well through those practices that we employ in the vineyard.
But the wines are perfect, so that's good.
Wines are very good. I am having the 2021 Chardonnay, by the way. I mean, distinctively different, obviously, different blends of wine, and not a blend being the Chardonnay, but gee, she's lovely. I really love wines that can, let the fruit speak. There's obviously use of oak here, but for me, the fruit speaks. Like, that's forward. It's the harmonious oak that's kind of giving it this balance, but God, it's beautiful. It's really fresh, lovely.
Yeah, I think, sometimes when I read things my grandfather's written 30, 40 years ago, I'm quite surprised with how progressive his thinking was, or, he was writing things 30, 40 years ago that we're just talking about now. And I think the Chardonnay and the style of Chardonnay that he wanted to produce back in the 70s is a really good example of that. There's been a lot of ebbs and flows stylistically of Chardonnay in this country, and I feel like Mount Mary Chardonnay has remained very consistent, very even keel through all these ebbs and flows in style. And he was a believer, and I'm a believer as well, that Chardonnay doesn't have to be all one way or the other. You can make a style of Chardonnay that has great acid, great focus, great freshness, great drive, but still have flavour and concentration and personality. And that's always been stylistically what Mount Mary is. Yes, it's got good flavour concentration, but it's also got some of that, really nice acid freshness and drive to it. So, we've added a few different clones of Chardonnay to this blend over the years, but really stylistically it's remained, pretty consistent.
Yes. So this would be, can you talk us through a little bit of the winemaking process on this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oak regime and...
Yep, sure. So as we spoke about with phenolics and texture before when we were tasting the Triolet, that's important for this one as well. So all the fruit's crushed into stemmed. We've changed it up a little bit now where we put a little bit of whole bunch fruit into the press and then crush into stem on top, just to try and curtail those phenolics a little bit. But really, we crush into stem because we want to extract that phenolics. We're not fermenting on skins, but we're just trying to give it a little bit more skin contact in the press cycle. We press reasonably hard, but we're always tasting and watching and making press cuts if we need to. Press the tank, settled for 24, 48 hours. We rack it. We take quite a lot of the solids with us, mix it up in the tank, and then we put it straight to barrel and really kind of let it do its thing. So it's around 25, 30% new oak. Yeah, oak is, I guess, an interesting topic. It's a bit of a taboo topic now in Australia with Chardonnay, but I still believe that, the best Chardonnays, or the Chardonnays that I love to drink, have an element of oak. I don't mind seeing a little bit of oak in our Chardonnay as long as it's balanced and it's it's well integrated and it's nice oak. I don't mind seeing a little bit. It's part of the style.
Well, we're coming to the end of part one. I've got a couple of questions I'm going to sort of quick fire at you. It's not a segment. I just got a bunch that I think are hopefully quick, fun answers for you.
Yep.
But we are excited for the flight of Quintet on the next episode. So make sure you subscribe, everyone, wherever you're listening. Sam Middleton, how do you protect your liver? If you've got to be tasting wines for work, how do you just make sure you stay healthy?
Well, I run a little bit, but I have a Coravin at home. That's probably been the best thing for me.
I just wondered because you've got to taste. That's your job. Anyway, have you ever thought about a side label?
Well, I do have two side labels.
Okay, hit us. What are they called?
So one's called On and On, which started in 2008 with two of my great winemaking friends and great life friends in Will Byron and Casper Herman. So, yeah.
Shout out to Casper. By the way, it was a leading question. I obviously knew it. We spoke about it with Casper last week.
So that's been really good fun. And the other one's DML. So I do that with some other great friends of mine. So the Dana boys, Franco and Ant, obviously have Hoddles Creek, and Jordan Lewis. To collaborate with other winemakers is a really enjoyable thing to do. And in some cases, it challenges your beliefs and what you think you should be doing with certain varieties. So yeah, you have to compromise on certain things when you're working with other winemakers. So plus we're working with different vineyards, different regions, which is also, super interesting. And
I guess that would, imagining that, for year after year, you do your own thing at Mount Mary. Sort of, you take decisions, but then it should be quite interesting as well to be in a team, as a team player, and make something different. Surely there's a lot to learn as well at that time.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think that's really, that's not to say that Mount Mary isn't a team. We've got a really strong team at Mount Mary and we collaborate a lot together. But yeah, when you're working with different winemakers that have their own, larger labels or, larger jobs outside of these side projects, it's interesting to challenge your ideals on certain things.
Love it. If you had 40 acres or a chance to start a winery on another 40 acres anywhere in Australia, where is Sam Middleton planting?
Oh, great question. I think it'd be Gippsland. I'm super passionate about Gippsland. I think it's, if it's not already, it's the next frontier in, world-class Pinot production in particular. So that's where I'd be.
Have you already got something out there?
No.
Okay.
Bus Middleton.
I wish.
No,
Always on realestate.com.au, just like checking out the sites.
I do keep an eye on what's going on down there, but no, we don't have anything.
Yeah, a couple of great Pinot examples up there as well, so it makes sense. Sam, thank you. We're not going to pretend that we're not about to chat in 5 minutes, but for everyone else, in a couple of weeks, we're going to be doing a deep dive into a vertical quintet, which is so exciting, as once again stamping my claim, my favourite Yarra Valley producer. So looking forward to it, mate, and thanks for being here.
Thanks very much for having me. Appreciate it.